Hi guys, and welcome to our hangout. We are lucky enough to have the incredible, and I've called her an OG today as well, the incredible Donnaleigh de LaRose.
Thank you, Tony.
How
Thank
are
you
you?
for inviting me.
You are so very welcome. I feel like I've already interviewed you beforehand, and I'm kind
I
of we were catching up beforehand. But the question I wanted to ask you, Donnaleigh, is the question that everybody asks all the time: where has Donnaleigh been, and is she back?
I'm so grateful that people even noticed I disappeared. So it's a great question. And I'm always very conscious of mental health and making sure everybody is in a good state. When I do readings with people, I always prioritize the person's state of mental health. So I was going through a lot with COVID. Afterward, first of all, there was a lot of digital stuff. So I got a little bit of digital overwhelm. That was part of it. But also, I was dealing with a very stressful medical job. And there, at that point, we got to the point where there was an investigation on a coworker in our office, which got extremely stressful. And I ended up just like leaving. Um, and I really felt like I needed to, and I don't know if anyone has ever been through this, after you go through an abusive type situation, if anyone has ever been in a toxic relationship, when you leave, there comes a point when you feel like you want to cocoon. You just need to sit in your space and kind of like the computer defrags, you kind of like need to set everything up within you and defrag and come back. I found that the healthiest thing for me was to step back from social media and stop giving and producing and putting myself on a hamster wheel. I just really needed to stop. So I gave myself that space and I spent a lot of time with Bo, my partner, and with my family. My mom is going through some stuff too where she has dementia. So we were supporting my dad as a caregiver and my mom. So there was a lot going on behind the scenes, and I just couldn't give of myself during that time when it was like so much emotional stuff going on. When I finally did leave the job, I gave myself a little bit of time, and then I'm like, you know what? I think I'm ready to do these things that I love again. And so it's been 3 years that I had been off social media. I'd only put in maybe 2 posts, 3 posts maybe in those few years. And this is what my heart loves. This is where I feel like my heart sings. When I'm doing Lenorman, when I'm working with tarot, when I'm working with people, when I'm teaching people so that they can do it themselves, that's when I feel like I am flying. So as I'm getting back into it, I tentatively stepped in with baby steps and did some things that maybe people weren't used to seeing me doing in terms of some of my content in the beginning was more tarot than
Mhm.
Lenormand. I didn't really want to get too deep into the Lenormand at first, but that's what I use all the time myself every day. And now I'm back. Yes, I am back. And I've been putting up content every day since I think it was last May
Yeah.
and working with clients again. And I really, really love it. So yeah, I'm back.
I think a lot of us have been through a lot, and you say about COVID times, and we were on social media constantly. It was a time at which that's all you had if you wanted to communicate
Yeah,
with people outside. All you were doing is social media,
right.
and I think it hit a lot of us. I mean, the first thing that you see it with me is my Instagram account. The posts will drop and drop and drop until there's no more posts on Insta. That's the first hit when you see me, separating from social media.
Yep.
Um, Facebook, I allow a little bit more than I do with Insta. But I think, all that online business over COVID, and then if you add any personal things into the mix, that stepping back's the only way to keep yourself with head above water.
Right. And that's 100% what it was. And I was processing some things from my past. I mean, I really used that space as best that I could. But it was funny because I learned a different perspective of the cards when I was doing that, because I'm really someone that is so, like, those of us who love cards, this is what we go to, right? This is when we go in space with ourselves, we use it for journaling and other things. And I really felt like what I was learning to do is use the cards instead of like what's happening to me, like to create power. In other words, to my inside internal experience, what can I do to push and create something? So rather than being defensive against all the things the cards are saying were happening, I wanted to be more on the offense. It's like, okay, now what can I create, do? Where should I, the next step? And that is, so I turned the meanings of the cards from more reflecting back to me, other things, from me reflecting out toward the world.
Or rather than asking or seeing what is going to happen, you're asking an advice on how you navigate forward.
Yes. And how that helps me in my readings with my clients is a lot of times they come to me and I can tell them what's happening to them and they can identify with that. And I almost feel I have to go there first with them, and then we can talk about how they can, push their best future forward, what is it that they can create and do, how they can react to it. I almost feel like a lot of people come into a reader thinking that the world is happening to them. And then we realize that our happenings are all what's happening in our head, creates our world, our perception of the world, our perception of everything is based on our life experience and what's happening to us. And that two people can have the same view, like they see the same thing happening and have a totally different concept of what's going on based on what is living in our brain.
Well, that's actually interesting because we were talking about the OM. OM is a system, well, Jane can tell you best, coming from the Celtic language. And that's the idea that we are the center of our own universes.
Yeah, it's a really, it's the earliest form of the Irish language, and like dates from like the 4th century AD. And what I really love about OM is in its language, it is first and foremost, but it's a talisman, and it was a tally system, and it tallies everything within the universe. But when you use it as a way of understanding self, and it actually it asks you to really look within, and it allows you to explore the depths and navigate you around that. And part of the principles of that is, you are the center of your universe. We might share the same universe, but we are each ourselves the center of our own universe, because it is a uniquely personal experience and an individual one granted to each and every one of us. And how we perceive and experience the universe around us is different, and it really brings a lot of insight to it. So I love that system for that reason.
Yeah, that's so much what I was just saying. I can relate to that so deeply. And it's funny because depending on the type of personalities we have, so say someone is, we can miss things. For example, we project, we don't realize how much we project. But we can see someone say something that is maybe passive aggressive and it's meant to hurt us. But if we're, say, empathic, we would think something like, well, perhaps they didn't mean that. They maybe meant to say it this way, because I would never say something like to someone else. I would never. And we think that other people are coming from the same reference point that we are. And everybody has a different reference point. So that universe that you're talking about that makes so much sense to me. And the type of upbringings we have create the foundations of our universe, and the type of relationships that we have. I learned that the most important thing in our lives are the people we hold closest around us, the relationships that we allow into our inner space. Because you can have a very confident self image or feel good about yourself. But if you're with someone that is, say, abusive, even if it's not physically hitting, if there's someone that is just very negative, passive aggressive, if they're negging you all the time, there comes a point when you start to hear it in your head. It's their voice, but you hear it as your voice in your head, and it starts to change how you feel about yourself. That inner universe starts to become more tight and constricted. So, and a lot of, when I work a lot with women, a lot of finding our way out of that is trying to undo all the things we've been taught by people who don't necessarily hold our best interest at heart.
There's plenty of that.
Mm-hmm.
That really is, scarily so.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
When you find good people, hold on to them very tight. They're very
do you
important.
feel that with all the changes that have happened for you, we were talking with Melissa about it last week, do you feel that your clientele has not changed, but come to you with perhaps similar issues than what you've worked through already yourself?
Yeah, it's interesting because what we put out into the universe, and I remember as I was setting up, my website had crashed last year, and I remember thinking I was writing what to put in it. It's like I'm kind of calling in what I am most interested in by the words I put there, but I was also in my head creating almost like a spell type thing where I was saying, let these people come to me that have these needs. And it's interesting. I mean, I have a lot of repeat customers, and the ones that came in the beginning that were asking more about other things that weren't relationship focused, maybe they were more career focused. Once we're in a few times, then the other stuff starts coming out, and they're like, I've been wanting to ask you this. And then they would come out and we go into the deep, deep sessions. So it just ends up happening that way. And I feel like I have a better knowledge base, having experienced certain things, to have more compassion in how I approach my responses to people.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just tell someone get out in certain situations. It's not always quite that easy, and the mind doesn't always work that way because the person in those relationships is conditioned to feel they can't do it on their own. That's the voice that they're hearing every day is you're not capable, you can't do this. And it's, you kind of have to work with that inner universe to get them to feel that they are capable of it. And I find a lot of times too, people that are very empathic are afraid, not even afraid, have been conditioned not to express anger because it's considered one of those, bad emotions. And I've learned, the few times I really felt anger, genuinely felt burning anger, that it was extremely important because my body was telling me there's an injustice happening here. This is wrong. This is really something I have the right to get upset about. And the anger becomes a catalyst for action, whereas you may have been more passive previous to that. It becomes like I'm doing something, and you become a fighter, and that's a good thing. We're fighting for ourselves. We're defending ourselves. We're honoring, keeping ourselves in a good place by fighting back. So, when people claim that anger is not good, there are times when anger is misused. There are times when anger is used to control or to manipulate, to scare as part of manipulation. But there are times when we can feel genuine anger that it creates big changes in our life, those tower moments, when we think of tower.
Teaches us ourselves something as to how we feel on the matter, because if you have zero feelings whatsoever, there is nothing in which anger can grow. So it does show or helps us understand ourselves in that we understand that, okay, number one, I feel passionately about this. Why do I feel passionately about this? What is there within this that makes me feel so passionate? And, how do I deal with that going forward?
Right. Yeah, our emotions, they do kind of take us over. But I do think they're great leaders. I do think they give us good information.
I don't know if I entirely 100% agree with you on that one, Donnaleigh, but I will say from a medical perspective, I have an acquired brain injury and I have executive dysfunction, and the emotion regulation in that aspect is something that is damaged, is not always controllable, and therefore isn't a choice, or if it is, it's not one that I would choose within that. So, I don't entirely agree in that essence with that, because there is circumstances with which people don't have that control, can't have that control, and it is an actual disability not being able to. But it is something that you try every single day to be your best self and regulate, and it does require an immense amount of work upon. And I think anything on an emotional level, whether you've got difficulties with your emotions, difficulties with your brains, or none at all, it is something that actually it's imperative to actually work upon yourself, and to always strive for growth and to be the best person that you can be. And I think that even on days in which you might fail that, and at times in which you might fail that, the aspect of not giving up and continuing to actually try to improve is fundamentally, as important as what it is feeling those emotions, being able to understand and an awareness of yourself and what makes you react as well, because no emotion comes without a trigger or a reaction. Everything, a reaction is because of something. It's a consequence. It triggers something within the body. So if you're experiencing a reaction to anything, it's because of something. One of the biggest things for me is excesses of noise, or being in an environment that is unfamiliar, and that automatically heightens fight or flight. And at that point, everything starts. It's similar to autism that way, and it, meltdowns can occur, but you can do things to mitigate, such as, you can put earplugs in and you can plan your journeys, familiarize yourself with your environment, but you can't take away a trigger entirely. And I think the process of working on yourself is something that, everybody should do.
Absolutely. And it's funny because, we each have different triggers. I have my triggers too. And I remember seeing, it was a meme or a book or something. I said that our triggers are our biggest teachers. And I remember how hard that was to read. But it is very true. And that the triggers, when you have a trigger, it sends you back in the moment. It's almost like you're in another place immediately, that set that up for you. And it's you're right. You don't have control over it. And the first thing is the awareness that you're talking about, and then just trying to figure out a way to regulate it. So because I've seen people too say like, "Hey, nobody posts anything on my page because this is my trigger." I'm like, well, everybody's got different triggers, and you're going to end up seeing somebody's post. You're like, you can't control what other people do, but it's hard. It is to control our triggers, being aware of them and then working through them, shadow work and other things. I've learned some of my triggers. I've been able to regulate some, but I also realize like different people have different kinds of triggers, and some of them are really heavy stuff. It's hard stuff to work through.
Well, it goes back to that universe again, and it's all coming from a different point of view, coming from a different place, having different upbringing, if there's any trauma in that. And even if there's not trauma, there'll have been situations which have created something. And not to mention, if you believe in past lives, how many how many things you're traveling with over time. So it's a lot for all of us. And the fact that we can all, get along as we can and share, in divination. I think things like that, is coming together despite what our triggers are, despite what backgrounds we have, and actually coming together, practicing, having fun together. I think things like that are ways forward for all of us.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I'm just looking at some of the comments. Divine Control says, love Donnaleigh, been watching her forever. Dennis Callat and Raoul, hello.
Hi, Dennis.
Donnaleigh was saying before that she's working with the Callat cards now and trying to get to grips with that new system.
Yeah, I love those cards. I was telling Tony before we went on live how once you get used to a system, so working with the Lenorman now, it's like you have a more gestalt look at the cards, and you can immediately start putting it together without even thinking, because after you've done it for a while, it's your language, and it's just very immediate. And then it's just explaining it to the other person with all the pieces, which is fun. With the Callet cards, what I'm finding is that because it's all new, I remember going way back to when I first was exposed to Lenormand cards, and you have to go card A, card B, and then card C and D, and you really have to stop and think, really like putting the pieces together. I'm finding myself doing that again, but the joy of learning is such a thrill. This new language, a new way of seeing things, and how someone else has added these other things to it. It gives it like a spark of something new and exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Plus the images are just like unbelievable.
Here's a question for you. Which deck has traveled with you to Florida?
A few. So there's one deck that goes with me even if I go to the grocery store, and that's the Stralsunder.
Yeah.
And it was given to me by a friend, and it's all laminated, and it's to me the perfect deck, and it's easy. I love the small size. Good for the purse. I have the Game of Hope with me. The Destroyed Dondorf has come with me. Oh my gosh, it looks so antique, and it was affordable. So those are probably my biggest go-tos. I was looking all over today before this for Chiro's Gilded Reverie because they're so like big and easy to see. Yeah. I thought it'd be great for this. I scraped and I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought I brought those. I don't think I did. So that was the other deck that I thought came with me, but didn't. I'm disappointed.
What is your favorite? If you had to choose one Lenormand card, what would your favorite be?
Holy mackerel, there's a question.
Isn't it? I've got several.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, I'm not talking about imagery now because that goes from deck to deck.
Meaning.
I'd
have to go with Lily. And the reason I say that is because it has those placements to it. You know, if it's above, we're virtuous. If it's below. So it kind of tells you a lot of stories.
With one.
In just one card. Yeah,
and I was going in a different direction. I was thinking, like, which one makes me feel the best? Like, I love the heart. I love the flowers. It's a stork even because it's like it elevates you. You feel like you're flying. And those are the first three that came to mind. And it's funny because, you know, I noticed I just had it up to the garden card. And as lovely as that is, I am an introvert by nature. So if there's too many people anywhere, I'm like, kind of like Jane was saying with the noise. Yeah. I am with a big crowd. So I'm like, man, not that one. But, and I'm a book lover. I could live in books and never come up for air. So there's something about the book card, the things we learn, sitting with a book. There's just something magic about a book.
I realized the other day I was doing a back to basics course, basically going through the Lenormand meanings. And I realized that halfway through that I kept saying, oh, this is one of my favorites. This is one of my favorites. You know, just run through them. It's like, oh, I love this one as well.
Yeah. And it's funny because, you know, when I get a new deck, I always want to pick out my new favorite, but it's by the image, like the call-out cards. I was looking at the heart and it's kind of frozen on the top and it's sparring at the bottom. And I'm like, that is just so like emotive and it's so realistic. Like, I love it. It's my favorite. But then you see another one and, you know, he has a volcano card that shows an eruption, and it shows, and I was just telling him this morning, I love that you chose something for anger, because there's not anything specifically in Lenormand. You can put some cards together and you get elements of anger. You can get the scythe with the whip. You know, there's certain things you can get that can show there's a problem with the snake, but to have a card for something like that was a great addition to represent that.
What's that movie with the red thing where his head blows off? Is it Elementals or something?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a Disney movie. The emotion, anger, and when he gets angry, his head blows off.
I love it.
Flames. Yeah, you need that in your deck. You need.
It's so important. Sometimes it's important because, like we talked, the within versus the without. It's important because if we're mad about something, it means something needs to or should be done, you know. But if it's happening outside of us, that might mean something different. And exploring and digging through that gives you something to explore. It could be extremely important to that person's world.
That's very true. In the runes, if you had Hagalaz inside, and there's all that, you know, that Hagalaz externally, then it's everything else hitting you.
Right.
He says there's no greater, you know, rune. There's no greater rune for pure assertion, whether it's you asserting your will, whether it's people asserting theirs upon you, you know, whether conflict and confrontation and enthusiasm. And you think of Thor and his hammer and him swinging that roundabout. And I don't think on an emotional level that there's, you know, you can beat something that brings that, harnesses that energy, because when you read them with the runes and you're looking at and you're feeling those energies as you're actually in the process of reading them, you're actually experiencing the emotions right in their rawness, you know, and it really drives you. I think that runes are really beautiful in being able to articulate the emotional aspects.
Yeah, that's so perfect, Jane. And it's funny because I was doing some runes the other day, and I was thinking I wanted to put out a video about the Fehu rune, and then this leads me right into the Hagalaz. One thing I noticed over time, and I noticed this with Lenormand's fish card and with the rune Fehu. And when you're talking about anger and everything, about how it makes people feel, what I realized over time is that when I'm doing a relationship reading and you get the fish card, say, from Lenormand, or you're talking about emotions and then you get the Fehu rune, I'm like, well, this doesn't really have anything to do with money or like value, but it does have to do with the value of the individual and the worth of the person. And I understood over time that it was self-worth, how you feel about yourself, the worth of the person. And so a lot of times when I get a reading and they're asking about a relationship, and I'll get like fish followed by mice, where if there's a fish and a whip and mice, I'm like, there's a devaluation of this person. There's something that they're getting repeatedly that's bringing their worth down. And it's not a money thing so much as just the value that we have for our personal selves, the core of who we are.
And if we're looking at emotions as well, you know, the fish is an emotion. That's that overwhelming of emotions, or with Fehu, the overwhelming emotions that go with it. But yeah, then that with negative cards or with negative runes afterwards, and you've got that deterioration.
Yep. And do you read runes like you do Lenormand, like in succession in small spreads? That's the way I do it.
We cast.
So if you had 3 runes, you would read them as a unit together versus individual position. It would
depend on where they landed. So the one closest to you is the start of the story, and the further they fall away, your narration then goes with that flow.
I love that.
I pull daily runes. I post daily rune spreads where I'll do 3 card pulls and 3 runes, and I'll build a narrative on that. So I will tell a narrative of it. But what you usually find with the runes as well is you can actually, doesn't matter what that you read that narrative, but it'll actually say that same narrative running either way. And it's what it actually, you know, when you look at runes as an aspect of an energy in themselves, and they're not just, you know, for the purposes of divination, but also for magic. So when you're looking at them as an energy, and you're looking at the ways in which that energy is actually, you know, touching upon each other. So when you're pulling on a 3-card spread, those energies are actually intermingling. So it's not about what a singular aspect is doing, but it's the ways in which these energies are all integrating together, and what that's bringing as a whole towards you. And I think that's a beauty with regards to things like runes, whereas they are a specific like energy where you can actually bind runes and harness their energies for the purposes of magic to manifest. Lenorman for me slightly different in that, you know, you've got that kind of structure in the ways in which the cards have to be applied and running through that process of that narrative. But with the flow of energy with regards to runes is something that when you're working with that flow, when you flow with it, you find that your narratives come a lot easier because it'll just come, they just present.
But if you think about that, it's similar to throwing a Lenorman GT. Yeah, you've got your techniques within it, but as soon as you lay that Lenorman GT, you've got a feel of what that situation feels like. You know, with any system, it's laid out, you know, already before you even start going through what's where, you've already inlaying felt, oh, you know, this doesn't look so good, or, you know, you've already got a feeling on what the energy of that spread is.
Absolutely.
So should we do a few reads?
I would love
to. We have a request for you, Donnaleigh. I would love a reading from you regarding a house move. They are looking for the right home to purchase.
Okay.
So any advice you have on that?
So this is advice rather than looking at whether this is the right house or, okay.
I would suggest so, because we don't have specific details.
Right. All right. So I'm going to move my camera. You're going to get a little bit of jostling while I get it focused down on the cards instead of my face so you can see what I'm pulling. And let's see if I can turn my camera over on this.
Tech.
Yeah. Will it let me turn the camera? If not, I may have to manually.
Oh, I was muted. That didn't help. You're just going to have to tell us what cards you get, Donnaleigh, I think.
Okay. Okay. I guess I will. All right. So did my screen go blank?
Yes, you're all black.
There we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
We're back. All right. Let me show you what I got. So I love my favorite spread is I have a 6-card spread that I devised when I wanted. I love working with houses. So I tend to use the more timeline grand tableau. And once you start using with houses, I heard Dennis Callett say this the other day, once you have houses and you work with houses, like it's impossible not to have them anymore because they give so much valuable information to the reading. So what I did is, because the houses are always stationary and I was doing these little, first it was 5 cards, now I'm down to 3-card readings. I wanted to have houses under them. I put the house under them randomly. So it's 3 cards. I'm just going to put down 3 cards for her in regard to the house. And then I put 3 randomly underneath it. Gosh, I wish you could see these. Yeah, I guess this disables my forward-facing camera. I don't know if I can do this for you.
Oh, there you go.
Can you see them? Is it facing the cards?
A bit further down and you'll get the second line in.
How's that?
Yeah, we can see them now.
Okay. And then I need my glasses. Hold on. Because I'm open blind. Okay. So if this were asked about a specific house, I would have the answer to that. Now, this is said differently because we're looking more at advice. And the moon is basically about unknowns, and it has to do, it's over the moon or reputation of how things are seen. And this has to do, the fox is, when I see it in a spread, it usually means to me, wrong, be careful, things are not what they look like. You may be seeing things differently. The key is a really important piece of information it says something really close to look at, and that's on top of the house of star. So star has to do with like a lot of something, seeing a lot of something, spreading out, having high hopes for something. So you could go in like feeling really hopeful about something. The key is that you may be influenced by your hope. Dog and the lilies, staying true to really looking towards something for the long term, making sure it is like a peaceful environment, that it's harmonious. Now, in this spread, these are the three main cards. These give clarity about the top cards. So I don't read these three side by side. Although sometimes I will say I have gotten messages where I'm like, I have to say it because it's just blaring so big. But what I like about this spread too is if you read this first card with this last card, it kind of bookends the whole reading down into something smaller and tighter. So it's really saying like there's a lot that you may not be seeing at first. So be careful. So like, for example, when we went looking for houses, one of the things I noticed is they put rugs on top of parts of floors that had chunks out of them, or they would put flowers on the counter when it was something that was like a burnt countertop. There's ways that they can hide things that you may not see. When we purchased our house, there were rugs on the floor by the sliders, and they were beautiful rugs, but we lifted up these place rugs after we bought the house and found that the floors underneath them were destroyed. So basically, how you're seeing things, there may be something that is like wrong or hidden. So don't be afraid to lift things, move things around, look under things, look behind the pictures on the wall, that sort of thing. And the moon with the last one is Lily, you want to make sure it's harmonious. You want to make sure it's pure. You want to make sure that when you're there for the long term, it's the same thing. So pay attention to things in the house that are going to last, be more long term, and be more loyal to things that will last than to be something that is, say, more temporary or more fad, like that's in the house, and something that will be more long term, so it doesn't need to be changed. Or if you're looking at, say, a furnace in the house, make sure you pay attention to that's not something that is ready to go and you just can't see it. You may want to check inspection stickers, that sort of thing. Septic, same thing. But it's really saying pay close attention to the unseen and long term. So so that would be my advice, is to really, because you get the fox that came up here, and the fox is really wily with the things that they may not want you to see or know. Is like, do a little personal digging yourself, and don't be afraid to touch things and to ask questions about inspections, things you may not see. Like if you ask specifically about the septic, make sure that you know, how old is the septic, or when is the last time such and such was done. Ask about the roof, that sort of thing. Especially when you get stars here. It's funny because stars are up on top, so you may want to look up. That's just kind of a more like gestalt way of looking at the cards, rather than the actual, you know, meaning of stars being hopes and aspirations and dreams, or networking and spreading out. You may want to just kind of like look up as well and see if there's any cracks in the roof, that sort of thing. So that would be my advice to her in terms of house.
Oh, she'll be back in a second. I bet she just knocked herself off by accident. Jane, you are up next.
So card reader Laura wanted to know where the card business will take her. She's just started doing practice readings and wants to be professional soon. So I actually pulled 5 rooms in a thing. So what you can see is with that, guys, are going to have some real breakthroughs. So the card business is actually going to bring you some massive, you know, transformation, some massive breakthroughs. It's going to provide you with a lot of strength and fortitude as well. It is something you will need to harness to push through, because haggle has been central, means that there is going to be some external kind of disruptions with regards to your card reading business. But for me personally, I do believe it's more to do with like the actual aspects of business. And by that, it could be like insurance and liabilities, you know, setting up your systems, whether or not it's something you can apply yourself to full-time, or you have to do, you know, part-time work, or you know, it's part-time supplementing your work at the moment until it actually takes off. But with Ava's in there, it is going to be something that it will build momentum, and it'll be building momentum pretty quickly once you do start within that. And it's something that's going to bring a lot of meaning to you and make it really, you know, bring a lot of deep joy within you. It's something that fundamentally, you know, in your heart of hearts is what you really feel drawn to do. And I wish you all the best of luck with that.
Yay. be a professional card reader. There's a lot. There is a lot of joy in it. Absolutely. Great advice. Okay, I will. Susanna Sana, let's see if this new apartment is going to manifest for you. I'm using Lenorman as well, although I am throwing it all over my chair first and foremost. Will Susanna Sana get this apartment? Show me what's going to happen with it. So, anchor, sun, bouquet, book, letter, stalk, ring, rider, and coffin. It actually, apart from coffin at the end, obviously, it looks really positive that you could, in fact, be offered this apartment. It may be something actually when it comes through that isn't perfect for you and you personally don't want to take. So if there is any reason it goes downhill, it's because you actually have found something different that you are more interested in, or something from your side that really means that you're not too keen on the commitment afterwards. So short answer, absolutely yes, possible for you to get this apartment. However, you may personally decide that something else is more suitable for you.
Can I just ask a question of Donnaleigh? You know how you began your divination journey, so to speak, with tarot. What was it about Lenorman that really drew you to wanting to do like that system? You know, what is it that brought that pull for you?
That's funny. Well, I started out with crystals before I did tarot, and that is more of a system that's like the runes that you were describing, what's closest to things, what's in clumps. But when I was doing tarot for many years and then went to Lenorman, here's what shocked me, and I was really kind of trying to prove to myself, you have to say what's in the cards, and there's not a lot of wiggle room. So you have to have trust that the cards are saying what's right, because there are positives and there are negatives that bring it down. And tarot, you can kind of turn those into something really soft and squishy if you want to. With Lenorman, it is what it is. And what I found, it was right. It kept being right over and over. And I've loved the system of it, allowing it to say a truth, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. And I think it's similar to what I said about Kipper. I did a blog on Kipper last week, and I said that when you're reading for yourself, which readers notoriously find difficult to be impartial on their own reads, Kipper lays it out, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
You can't put lipstick on that pig.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. But it also helps you kind of like face it, and then you kind of know it's very real. It's very real. I was just talking with someone earlier today online, and she says, I'm reading tarot, and it said that the Seven of Swords came up, and she thought that meant someone was cheating her, but it turns out it wasn't. I'm like, this is where something like Lenorman makes it will tell you. It will tell you. But tarot does tap into our fears. Like if I fear something, I feel like the tarot cards start reflecting all that back to me. But the Lenorman has a little bit more, like it'll be like, no, girl, it's like you got it wrong. And it'll, then tell me for better or for worse what it is.
That's so very true. I think we've all had an ass kicking from Lenorman at some stage.
We have. Yeah, and it's like, and I keep trying to learn the Kipper because I have your Kipper book, and then I get out the Kipper cards, and then I feel like it's and this is where I need to take a Kipper class, because I feel like when I read the Kipper cards, I get more scary sounding things. Like, yeah.
They are brutal. They, like I say, I mean, when I was reading Lenorman to begin with, I thought they were brutal. And then I picked up the Kipper cards and I thought, my God, I had no idea how brutal it can be.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'm thinking, I'm like, no, that's not that bad. Like, so I got to tone it down somehow.
But then on top of that, you have Brants on, actually. You have the gypsy cards,
Yep.
which they just run in, hit you around the head, and then move out again. They are the brutalist of the systems, I find.
I have a quick question. When I disappeared, did you get to hear any of the reading?
Yes.
You did? Okay, good.
Reading. You only disappeared as you turned the camera around at the end.
Oh, good. Thank you. Wanted to make sure she got her reading. Okay.
Perfect. So we'll do one more read each, shall we? Donnaleigh, we have this one, Divine Central. Will the effort I am spending on this new project be worth it financially?
Okay. For the effort, we'll just give a shuffle. For the effort she's working toward be worth it financially. Here we go. Okay, so here's a teachable moment too. So I did my 6-card spread, and when they end up in a neutral card, for me, it's funny, we were just talking about this with Dennis Callett. What's the most important card in the spread? And I feel like the last card kind of gives you the punctuation of it. So we've got letter, tree, and woman, and the houses that they're in are sun, child, and garden. So the project, it looks like there's writing involved that would create some kind of like glorious exposure, joy. Like this, that's what's needed. If it's already a writing project, like you're on the right track. But it says for longevity, we've got it like it ended in woman in garden, and garden is just like a lot of people, but it doesn't give me a yes or a no so much. It leans more toward positive, but it's kind of like still a neutral card. So I got fish. I got 3 more cards down just to kind of clarify to lean me in one direction. Is this going to be like financially beneficial? And these 3 cards say it all. I got fish. So there's our money value. I got stork, which means elevating up and getting better. But then it ends in cross, which means like really struggling to make it happen. So the money part of it may not be quite as lucrative as one would hope now working on it. So it looks, and if I look back at the original cards, because they didn't give me the answer I was looking for because of the negative, I start looking for advice, or we could pull another 6 cards for advice, which is usually what I recommend people do, is pull a different spread to see how they could make it. But I feel like, let's see what we could do to make this better. I got mountain in the house of scythe. I got path in the house of ship, and I got bear in the house of book. And again, this looks like book or something in writing or something like that, but it looks like either like dual project with the path on the house of ship, like splitting the project or doing it 2 different ways, trying to create more than just like one venue for it that would be stronger for it. So for something like this, I would think like have video support for it. Have, if it's a book, make sure there's more than one way of getting it. So don't just have like in a PDF, have it like available on Kindle so that people with Kindles could get it as well as the paperback, or have an audiobook version of that, or there's like, try and like split it into more than one way of being seen. And then that ends up in bear and book, which it shows, and again, we're ending in another neutral, but the bear shows more strength there. And then I got the 3 cards that I liked if we do that. So the cards like that we do that. And I got house, I got heart and anchor, which means, yes, that stay with that. That's what's going to bring you what you love. That's going to give you more of a long-term thing. And I feel like creating more than one way of presenting it is probably going to be something that helps move it a little better. And also because it's over the ship, the house of ship, that may help it bring to, say, foreign countries or cross borders, be able to get to a wider audience, which could be that garden that we saw before. So I hope that's helpful.
Brilliant. And you, Jane? Oh, you, Jane?
So Steffi wanted to know, will a promotion go through within the next 4 weeks? So again, I put 3 rooms. It ends with 1 year, so I would say yes, it will go through. However, there will be a bit of a kind of need for you to go with the flow. I don't think where you're currently at will actually be able to release you, or the actual promotion itself with Yarra being central. I don't think your new job's going to start until spring. So there might be a bit of a, need to go with the flow a little bit, but you will be hearing in the next 4 weeks that you will have that job, but the actual starting of it isn't something that's going to be within those 4 weeks.
Fingers crossed, Steffi, everything goes perfectly. I actually saw a question and I thought, oh, I've got to do that one because it's juicy. And then I looked on Facebook, and who else could ask a juicy question but Tina Hart?
Tina.
And the question is an old friend legitimately in a bad state, or is he being manipulative and attention seeking? Tina, the answer is both.
Oh.
They're in a bad state, but there is a little bit of exaggeration in there. There is a bit of playing with your feelings in there. And so, yes, they're in a bad state, but it's also being used as a tool of manipulation. So I don't know if that helps you in any way. It is both. They are in a bit of a tangle. They are in a bit of a bad state. But coming to you with it is something a little bit underhand in it. Hopefully that helps.
I got exactly the same thing from my cards.
Well, it was, we had everything in there. We had the bear, which speaks of greatness, but also enemies. We had mountain in there, speaking of enemies. We had fox. We had and snake together, but we also had mice and clouds, the things that are saying, yes, there is something wrong, but then at the same time, there's manipulation in the mix.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say goodbye for now. I really want to thank you, Donnaleigh. I am going to be in your inbox because now you are back. You are absolutely doing Lenorman Summit. You cannot say no.
I am back. Yes, no. I have to say yes.
So thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
It's been a pleasure to meet you, Donnaleigh. I've heard so much about you in the community and things.
Thanks.
It's an absolute pleasure to meet you.
And we really hope that, 4 hours isn't too much in April to come down to Reader's Studio. Fingers crossed.
Okay. Well, now that I know that you're coming across the whole ocean to be there, yeah, I'm going to have to make an effort. I got to go and I got to see you.
Magic. So have a lovely weekend, everybody. We are back tomorrow with Sasha Graham. So that should be a whole heap of fun as well. And we'll see everybody else online. Bye-bye.
Bye.